In the late 1800s, around the 1890s, we see the rise of a political movement known as populism. But before we get to populism, let's talk about how it develops. In an earlier module, we talked about the Grange, which was an organization of farmers who were upset with the railroads, who they felt were charging them way too much to transport their product and to store their product in the railroad's warehouses. Well, you're going to see another organization of farmers develop in the 1870s known as the Farmers Alliance. And they have similar goals. But instead of petitioning state governments for help with the fees involved in transportation and storage of their produce, they are proposing a plan to the federal government known as the Sub-Treasury Plan. And basically the Sub-Treasury Plan is asking for the government to give loans to these farmers with really low interest rates, okay, and to provide warehouses so that they could store their product. Now, what's the whole point of this? Well, we talked about the issue of crop lien. You remember that in an earlier module? We talked about crop lien. What was crop lien? Well, small farmers, they needed money to get by, so they took out loans, right? They needed to buy some new farm equipment, so they took out loans from a bank, couldn't pay the bank back, and they end up losing their homes. Well, this is why the Sub-Treasury Plan was brought about by the Farmers Alliance, right? They want to get their loans directly from the federal government with low interest rates so that they could keep their homes, right? So they could pay back those loans. Eventually, the Farmers Alliance is going to form into a political party, right? Along with others, not just farmers, but mostly small farmers are supporting this new political party known as the People's Party, or also known as the Populists. And this is a reform party, right? They're trying to reform policy in the United States. What are some of the things that they're after? Well, they're calling for a number of different things, really, all related to reforming the system and bringing about a degree of equality. For example, they supported the formation of labor unions, okay? They felt that workers had the right, they should have the right, a guaranteed right, to form labor unions to fight for their rights. They were also calling for a graduated income tax, right? They wanted to have an income tax where the wealthy had to pay more than someone who makes much less than them, okay? So the wealthy end up paying more taxes than the poor, okay? Graduated income tax, depending on how much you make, all right? They were also calling for the free coinage of silver. Talk a little bit more about that. And they also wanted to see the direct election of U.S. senators. They didn't like the fact, they felt it was undemocratic that U.S. senators were not directly elected by the public. All right, so a number of different issues that the populists were focused on. They also tried to unite different ethnic groups under their platform, okay? So bringing together African Americans as well as Anglo-Americans under the platform of the People's Party or the Populists, all right? But in the South, you know, there's a lot of racism at the time, and African Americans were not allowed into the Farmers Alliance, into the South, in the South, and so African Americans created their own Farmers Alliance, known as the Colored Farmers Alliance. Okay, but you still see African American support for populism, as well as women. Women were also involved in the populist movement at the time. But the populists had a few weaknesses in the sense that they didn't get the support from urban workers, right? There were some miners and there were some industrial workers who did support the populist movement, but overall, industrial workers in the cities tended to support the Republican Party, right? Not the Populist Party and not the Democratic Party, who also supported some of the ideals of the Populist Party, all right? So what were some of the differences? Well, the urban workers, they liked high tariffs. And a tariff, if you're not familiar with it, it's an import-export tax. And if there's a high tariff, that means that imports coming from other places like Great Britain are gonna have a big import tax, meaning that they're gonna cost a lot more, right? And that protects American industries. So for urban workers, that's a good thing because they want American industries to be protected. That's where they work, right? They work at the American factories. Also, urban workers didn't really care about the sub-treasury plan. They didn't want the farmers to get what they wanted, because the farmers, they wanted high prices for their agricultural products, right? And so basically what the populists were calling for was the free coinage of silver. Okay, the free coinage of silver. What does this mean? Well, basically you have the Farmers Alliance and the populists wanting silver to be minted in mass and put into circulation in the United States because it's more readily available than gold. It'd be easier to get your hands on silver coins than for you to be able to get gold. And the farmers didn't have access to gold, right, until they sold their product. So what if they need to buy things before it's time to harvest their product, right? They don't have the gold. And so it's much more easier for them to get their hands on silver and then to pay their bills with silver. But most creditors, people who are giving out loans, only want to accept gold at the time, right? Because it has a higher value. They wanted silver to be coined because that would be easier for them to get access to. They could pay their bills, they could pay off their loans. So because of these issues, the urban workers didn't really get behind the platform of the populists, and that's going to hurt them. It's going to weaken their movement. Now, another issue at the time is the economic depression of 1893. Okay, so the country's in economic depression, the economy is not doing so well, and you're going to have a huge amount of strikes taking place in a number of different industries at that time. And the result is going to be state authorities, federal authorities cracking down hard on labor unions, which the populists support, right? They support workers being able to form unions and fight for their rights. Well, you're going to have authorities, I'm talking about, like police, federal troops, coming down hard on the workers who are going on strike during the time of the economic depression of 1893. Okay, so there's kind of a change in mood towards labor unionization. And this is all going to come to a head in the election of 1896, where you have the Democratic candidate, William Jennings Bryan, taking up some of the issues of the populist platform. Okay, so Bryan is going to support the idea of the free coinage of silver. He also supports unions. He also supports the graduated income tax. So he's got some things in common with the populists. So the populists realize, hey, we're a third party. Even though the Democrats have some differences with us, we need to put our support behind William Jennings Bryan because some of our issues might actually get accomplished. All right. So Bryan is going up against the Republican candidate, William McKinley. And McKinley, he's got the dollars behind him. Okay. He's got the support of big business, right? Remember, the Republicans support high tariffs, which protects big business. And so you're going to have big business putting a lot of money, like $10 million behind the campaign of William McKinley. And overall, McKinley is going to win the election of 1896. So yes, the populists, they were trying to bring about a level of equality with their policies, right? They wanted equality for workers. They wanted equality for small farmers. And they did have some success on the local level and even statewide level in terms of electing officials. But as far as, gaining the presidency, they were unsuccessful in the election of 1896.